Shalom Aleichem. The following is being brought to you by Rabbi Yehuda Shane, the administrator of Kashrus Anytime, which is a division of the Kosher Consumers Union, a 501c3 organization. We'll be talking about Esroigim, mostly about the issue of Murkovim. Big mystery is that when you look through the halachas of Murkov, the halachas of Esrog HaMurkov, you really don't find in Shulchan Aruch, on the Rishonim, on the Mechaber or the Ramah that they address at all the issue of Esrog HaMurkov. We can't say they were unaware of this because the Gemara, the Rambam, a lot of other ones do explain by Klayim and Murkovim. They're very, very much familiar with the whole issue of Murkovim. It's well known that Esroigim trees are very, very weak and they don't last long. It's basically just about the only tree that the roots grow sideways and like by the top of the earth. They don't go down searching for water. So it always needs water. That's what it's called gadol al-mayim. It needs a lot of water to grow. But it's very, very shallow root system. Just spreads out. So and it doesn't have a decent life. And because of that, it gets a lot of diseases, and their estrogen don't look nice, etc., etc. And they found over the years the best way of controlling that is to. There's a few different ways. Let's address first a few different ways of making another tree. One thing is the way it was years ago. They bend down a soft, fresh branch from a tree into the ground. That takes root. Once that takes root, they cut it off from the parent company. From the parent plant, and then there's another tree that grows, and then they'll take that tree, they'll plant it someplace else so it has enough room to expand. That's the way they did it. When they realized the weakness of these trees, they decided they have to find what to plant it, what to graft it with. You take the seed, cut open the seed, and put in the pollen from a different plant. That type of murkov, everybody holds is also. The question is when they're going to take a tree from an esrog, graft it, put it down onto a stalk of lemon, and tape it around, etc., etc., that it shouldn't rot and it should be able to take hold. They make a split in it, it's got an angle, and it takes the root base, it takes hold. So usually those, if you dig around by the tree, sometimes it's right by the ground, sometimes they'll do it right below the ground on the lemon tree. So we're able to tell if the tree looks like it's a murkov. Or sometimes they'll take, they cut off the top of the tree, they take a branch, a few branches, they put some sealant around it, and that basically will feed from the lemon or from the orange or grapefruit or whatever else it is, will feed off that, and it starts getting banned. So you could usually see a bulge in the tree, and you'll know exactly what that is. So that's a type of murkov that a lot of other ones also held that is osir. So some say it was osir to use the esrog because basically it was nesa by avera, which basically even a tree that you know is a murkov like a tree or klayim, you're allowed to make a bracha, not a shechiyana, but you're allowed to make a regular bracha on it because you didn't do the grafting, somebody else did the grafting. But over here, what the biggest problem was, and you have no way of knowing to be able to tell that it's murkov, if somebody takes seed or a branch from a tree that was murkov, that they were together with a lemon, and he replanted that you have no way of seeing anything. Now, like this, if they take a lemon branch and they graft it to esrog tree, the fruit that will come out will look exactly like a lemon, but it'll have a few little tendencies of an esrog. On the other hand, if you take an esrog branch and you graft it together with a lemon, it'll have everything of an esrog, the seeds, the bleakness, everything. It'll be like an esrog, but it will have the strength of a lemon. It'll have some other tendencies, a little bit like a lemon, but it'll be very, very hard. And even if you smell it, you're not really going to be able to tell, unless it depends how it took hold, that it was basically from a lemon. But if you take something from the tree or a seed from that thing and you plant it, you'll never know that it came from a lemon tree. It's true that the Ramban and others say that from a klayim, you plant the branch, it will grow with fruit. But if you take a seed, it will never grow into fruit. But basically, These, planting it with a lemon or even with an orange, it's questionable if it would really be called climb. It's definitely called a murkav because you have another mean that's in there with esrog. But is that called climb? Well, probably it's not called climb. It's not called climb. So even according to Ramban and the other ones, you will definitely be able to grow a tree out of it with fruit, of course. So basically, the Shulchan Aruch we really have not addressed when we're showing them what is a murkav and what is the status of a murkav and what type of murkav should we be concerned about. Now we know that the people have these certain simonim. One of the simonim by esrog is that it has bletas. It has all these bumps. The lemon or the orange does not have that, but esrog does have it. So if it's a very smooth esrog, it may be a murkav. Again, the ukets where the esrog grows from, where it's attached to the tree, is by a regular esrog, it's indented. By a murkav, it's protruding a little bit, just like by lemon and oranges. It's not really indented. Then, if you cut open the esrog, the seeds of a esrog lay in one direction. The seeds of a murkav or a lemon go in the opposite direction. The Chassam Sofer writes in Esroigim Siman 207 that simonim are not sufficient to tell if an esrog is pure. You have to have a Masorah for it. A Masorah that you know that people either in this area didn't graft, even though you're not sure about the specific tree, but if this area generally they didn't graft, they weren't markup, so you could assume that the rest of them are the same thing, that they were not markup. So even the place where we see that it says l'chatchila you shouldn't use esrog or murkav, the question is it a problem of the Iraisa or the Rabbana? And it doesn't seem really that it's a Iraisa, even though some may say that it's a Iraisa. But they say, you can't be moitzi laws on the Doiros Harishonim because they also took from those kind of things. They made a bracha. It was called the Shasat Chak. So basically, it seems that there was this Asik of the Murkavim goes back pretty far. There was also when they had the Salant family and others basically controlled the market of Esroigim for a while in Estrol in the late 1800s, whatever it was, don't know the dates. And then suddenly somebody took from Greece, Carfu, he took Esroigim and he planted it in Tel Aviv, and they grew beautiful Esroigim because it happens to be that the Greek Esroigim, their pitum always stays on. The other pitums eventually, some fall off very young, some fall off a little bit later, but they have a tendency that they do fall off. Some pitums have that the whole pitum is basically a woody stem. Those really fall off early. The ones that have a fruity stem and just the top is woody, those usually last longer. And the ones from Corfu, from Greece, all of them is a fruity stem and a wooden top. So then came out that the salons and the other ones basically put out a call right away that the ones from Tel Aviv are all Murkovim. If they were Murkov, they weren't Murkov. It's very hard to know because the ones from Greece originally was known that they weren't Murkovim. So to say that just because they replanted over here, the Murkovim, it just happened to be that in Greece they grew very well. Whether it was I don't know if it was the climate, because then when you've grown that well over here, and I think it was the type of tree they had there, etc., etc., was basically a tree that held up very, very well. When they came to Straw, so it doesn't say that, it says that from the times of Yeshua, so they started in the Midbar, they weren't Mekayim the Mitzvah of Minim, because they had no place where to get it from, but in the time of Yeshua, they started having it, and for years and years, until the Churban, basically everybody was taking the Esroigim from Estrol, whatever they had. They had a number of areas in Estrol where they knew from Beis Lechem, from Tzvas, from a few other Arab places they used to take Esroigim from. And the Taimana, the Yemenites, basically when they went before the Churban Bayis Rishon, they went to Taiman. And they all took along the Esroigim, the seeds, and was a Minigan Taiman that basically everybody planted esrog tree by their house. When somebody got married, they took whatever it was, and they planted by his house. Everybody basically, there was no business in Taiman of growing esroigim to become commercialized. There was no reason to be mark of it, because each one had his own tree, and then the shamas of the shul used to come around, the ones that had extra ones, and they used to give it or sell it very cheaply to the people that didn't have their own trees for esroigim. So basically, we have three types. We have the murkov that's made from the seed, which hakalmoid, that's definitely also. We have the murkov that's directly was with either they were markov, they put the whole tree onto a lemon or a khushkush or orange tree or whatever it is, or they took a branch, they put it on, and then you have the third one, which a lot of them feel is not really much of a problem, possibly, is that they took from the tree that was a murkov, they took from that a branch or a seed, and they replanted that, and that's what it was over there. So we have like this. The Yanav Esroigim, it seems that even though there's Hashgachas and everything else like it, the tendency from the Mumcham around is basically that Yanav Esroigim are basically straight across the board are all Murkafim. Is it that they were mark of this tree that we got that Esroigim from? No, because they have the Hashgachas, they check the tree, but there's nothing you could see on the tree because it was planted off a morkum de tree, you took a branch or a seed and you planted that off, there is no simon you'll be able to see on the tree. But basically, they have ashgacha, whatever else it is, but they're relying on that this tree in itself, they weren't markum, and that's what they go to check if the tree itself was markum. The fact that it was a tolda from a different morkum, that doesn't seem to concern them. And it seems the same way as it pretty much is when you have these mostly under the Ada, they call them Bi'Chezkas Bilti. Why can't they tell you why they built in Merkava? Because they have no idea of knowing if it's Bilti Merkava, but the only thing that they're telling you with this Bi'Chezkas Bilti is that this tree they weren't Markov. But if the rest of them, it came from Mukavdika trees, in all probability it came from Mukavdika trees, so that's why they'll never tell you Bi'Chezkas. They'll tell you only Bi'Chezkas, but they're not going to tell you Bilti Murkav. We could almost call it Bi'Chezkas Murkav. But not that the tree itself was Murkav, but that they took it from a tree that was Murkav. So we said the seeds of a Murkav are horizontal, along the width, while the seeds are vertical along with the height of the esrog. And the Chazonish and others basically went to check number of esrog, even from the same trees, and they found some went this way, some went that way. So it seems that and also that the esrog doesn't have much juice. The lemon and the other ones have more juice, and the Mukavim have more juice. But he said that basically he's to be a Sion on the Simonim and everything else. The Chazonish was Chayz, and he said that basically you can't rely on the Tviyasayin anymore, etc. He went up to Tzfas one year and he gave away that stick to one person. Then he went to another area and he gave away that stick to another person. He told him to plant it. But and then he really had his doubts if the Esroigim Ataka, if not Murkav or not, even though he got it from a little bit of a wild tree, but he had big sfekas if it was Taka not Murkav. So basically, to really know if it has to be a Murkav or not, it has to be a Kabbalah, that it's and a Masorah, that you know that these trees over here, people were in Markov, most like they knew in the Taman Esrogim they were in Markov. They tied it, there's a lot of areas from Morocco that we also have the same thing. We know that they weren't Markov over there. Then they planted it over in other places. The question, what happens now when they plant it in other places? They become more commercialized, and because of that they learned to be Markov in order to have it nice, or they didn't. That's a good question of what really happened on then as it went. So let's start first the history of the Esroigim. We'll start with the first Esroigim from Eretz Yisrael, when that happened, and what years, and when did the Sfekas and things start cropping up. So it seems from going back in history that until after the Churban Bayesheni, the Eretz Yisrael was the main source of Esroigim, because we're living in Eretz Yisrael all these years, and obviously they kept on replanting the local Esroigim, even though the trees didn't last that long, and the first 4 years they couldn't really use the Esroigim, so they only had an Esrog tree basically for like 5-6 years after that, and then they had to plant new ones, but they kept on planting, and especially the Taman were always planting new ones. Like they also found a letter from Bar Kochva that dated in very early, asking for Esroigim L'Lavim to be brought from Ein Gedi. So you see that in the Stroll, but that was the place where they had it. Then it seems in Tzfas there was everybody had in their yard and their gardens, and by the bigger villas and everything, they always had orchards full of Esroigim. And there was a few people that they used to make deals with the goyim that lived over there, who owned the Esroigim, and they'll buy from them all the Esroigim what it is, and they sold to the people. But there was no big profit margin, so basically they at that time they felt that there was really no concern of any Murkovim. So the Gdolei Yisrael that was there felt that basically that in itself is a Messiah from Doris that the Esroigim are pure and they don't have to worry about any of those things. The Bikurai Shloima brings from Ramotcha Gimpel Yafa that the Esroigim Yisrael have a Messiah from earlier generations that they are not Murkovim because it was not made into a business. It was basically, a few people made a few dollars on it, but not enough to go make them. They just want to make orchards and start making over here Murkovim. And the Maram Alshich and the Mabit who lived in Eretz those years, they wrote a length Isser about using the Esroigim Murkovim that existed at that time. Nevertheless, they still use the Esroigim from Eretz from places that they felt that they know is kosher. The Meir Orbach in the Imre Bina brings that the Esroigim Eretz have a Messiah and a Muchzik for many hundreds of years that they were not Murkovim. And he brings also from Shmuel Heller, who was the Rav in Sfas in 1840, that Esroigim that grew in the outskirts of Sfas are muchzik to be kosher for generations from time of the Beis Yosef, and anybody that lived in Sfas could make a bracha on the Esroigim that grew on the outskirts of Sfas because they were definitely not a murkav and they had a chazaka from Doir Doiris. The Shmuel Salan's son and other shluchim from the Bezdin of the Perushim Yerushalayim in the 1880s, 90s, basically they did a lot of research on the Esroigim Yisrael and most of Eretz Yisrael, and they found that most roiv of the Esroigim were grafted on branches of the chushchush, which is a type of an orange, and that's what they grafted it on. They did find some Esroigim that they were able to establish that those were not grafted at all, and they call that the Biladi Esroigim. And that is what's really the grandfathers of the ones that we really know now as the Braverman and Kivalevitz Esroigim started from that Baladi one, which they decided that the Bezdin of the Perushim and the sons of the Shmuel Slant who were in the business of the Esroigim, that they established that those seemed to be that they were not Murkav, and they grew really in the outskirts of Tzfas and Shechem and some in Tveria, some in the Arab town Al Faham and Wadi Kal. That's where they basically got these things from. Okay, we're gonna basically continue the thing at Esroigim on in another podcast. But for now, we'll just stop at this point. Now, Kultu.